This webinar will cover FDM 120, Design Submittals. As can be seen on the right-hand side, there's indication that there's been changes to the text. Most of these changes in this chapter were made to either clarify the language or to implement the federal government's plain language initiative. These text revisions, for the most part, does not change the intent of the text. So this webinar will not cover all of those changes, but will focus in on the typical section package. More specifically, we're going to cover the changes now required for the cover sheet and for the development of the typical sections. FDM 120.2.3.2 provides all the information for what needs to be placed on the cover sheet. But to show you how the sheet looks like and the requirements of the sheet, it's easier to show you or look at the exhibit that's contained in the chapter. The first thing you notice is that it looks a lot like a key sheet we'd use for the roadway or other component plan set. Over on the left are concurrent signatures collected using DocuSign. Over on the right is the EOR information, and right below that is the index of sheets that the EOR is being responsible for. Up below the title of the sheet, we ask for a description of what the work is and limits that using some type of roadway characteristic, either a side road, a bridge, etc. Then we introduce what we call a project location URL and work limits. The URL is tied to the GIS website. When you click on that URL, then you see the project on a state map highlighted with a dark colored line, and there's also some other work program information associated with that line work. Then we have some project limits that this is information that we would have called out in the county map with leader lines, but now this information is presented in text form. This project location URL and work limits takes the place of the county map. The county map is no longer supported, will be phased out at some time and not available. This is a proactive approach to providing a truly digital project location URL. To get information on how to create that URL, see FDM 910, which is the new key sheet chapter. There has been an effort this past year to align the efforts needed for developing typical sections for the typical section package with the effort needed to develop typical sections for the typical section sheets that we place in our contract plans. The idea is to develop one typical section that can be used for both of these, the typical section package and the contract plans. You can see here that within the chapter, it says to show all required typical section information contained in FDM 913.2. FDM 913 is the new chapter for typical sections. You're to show everything that is outlined or required in 913.2, except you must also show border width and clear zone here on the typical section used for the typical section package. Also, do not show typical section notes and details which are developed and shown on the typical section sheets in the plans. Don't include them here in the typical section package. Also, do not use parcel sections with the typical section package. One last final thing to cover is a change in the approval process. As shown here in the highlight, we're asking that concurrent signatures be obtained prior to signing and sealing, typically by DocuSign. We showed you the example, the exhibit, where we collected signatures using DocuSign. So now the process is that we take the draft or the final version of the typical section package, route it around to get those concurrent signatures, then sign and seal it and submit that to the department. And that concludes the updates for FDM 120 for the 2022 FDM.